Hi, my name is Kirk Hamilton, your host of the Staying Healthy Today show. This is a show where I bring you key experts in the fields of nutrition, prevention, integrative, and lifestyle medicine. And sometimes the guests talk about geopolitics like today. And, if we're not free, we can't be healthy. And so Michael Yon is a former Green Beret Special Forces combat correspondent in Iraq. And he and his wife, Masako Ganaha, go all over the world kind of trying to forecast and warn United States and other countries about what may happen. So 3 weeks ago, we did a thing on upcoming famines. And this time I want to talk about the southern, well, our borders in the United States. And the reason is I've listened to Michael for about 2 years, and he's down in Panama and the Darien Gap area. And he will say this, he'll go, okay, we turned off the faucet, but if you're really serious about stopping the invasion or mass migration, you've got to do steps one, two, three, and four. And I'll let him get into that because otherwise somebody can just another administration come in, just turn on the faucet, and we're in the same problem. So Michael, take it away. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me on, Kirk. And so I'm talking to you from Japan right now, which is another place that's being invaded. Basically, all the civilized countries. A few have resisted, like Hungary, but most of them have been invaded, quite like Ireland, is Netherlands, Luxembourg, Germany. I mean, United States, of course, Canada, Australia. I mean, long list. And here in Japan, they're working on it. In fact, Misako and I were at three protests a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks ago now, where there was 16 protests, I think, in one day in Japan against the invasions. But what would I do? There's a few major moves. That one is defund the United Nations and all the major NGOs that are involved. Anybody that's receiving American money, defund it. Anybody. In fact, I would just defund all NGOs, period, across the board, no matter what they're involved in. Start from zero, and I mean everybody across. What right do we have to give American taxpayers who can't pay the bills to NGOs? We don't even know what they're putting out there. But first of all, so United Nations has to go. Highest, all these people, Catholic Charities, got to go, right? Now, some people say we can't do that, and I'm like, why not? If in fact, if I were the president and I had a bunch of generals sitting at the table with me, and one of them said we can't close the Darien Gap, I would say you're dismissed, and thank you for closing the door, and we would proceed without them, right? Because these things can be done; they're easily done, and furthermore, you can also just turn off their water and their electricity, in New York and places like that. But we are the number one funder of the United Nations. That's one.
So
You got to rip out the plumbing. Rip
right.
out the
So
plumbing.
can we go down to the Panama Canal? Though the highest is there, the NGOs are there, the International Office of Migration. I've heard you talk about that, and they're in our own old Fort Clayton. I mean, it seems
They
bizarre
are.
that we have the thing that's funding the invasion or funneling the invasion, and it's in our old Southern Command. Is that it? It was. I've heard you say that.
That's right. They are in our old headquarters, which is right beside the Panama Canal, right beside the Miraflores Lock. So all the veterans of Panama, or those who live in Panama City, know where Fort Clayton is. And now it's called Ciudad del Saber, the city of knowledge.
Mhm.
And so that was our old U.S. Army South headquarters, and right beside, guarding the Panama. It's right. You can see one of the locks right out. I mean, and the railroad goes right by it, the Panama Railroad. And so now that's IOM headquarters, UNHCR, the whole works, right? Highest is there, Catholic Clinton Foundation, all those guys are all there, right? It's over 60 actually, so it's a long list of NGOs.
So you would turn it off in New York, I guess, at the United Nations, or get out of the United Nations, and then also, what would you do physically in Panama? Let's just start there to block our southern border, and let's go up.
And physically, the Darien Gap is one of the easiest places to close in the world. And I've had so many people tell me that we can't close the Darien Gap. And again, I'd be like, you're fired, right on the spot. I spent a long time in the Darien Gap. It's one of the easiest places in the world to close. And in fact, as soon as Trump was president this time, they did close it, right? I mean, the Panamanians closed it. It's simple to close. it's the Darien Gap. I mean, you've got an obstacle that God made there, which is quite rough. You know what I mean? It's like 100 kilometers of very intense jungle, mountains, mountain of death, Montaña de la Muerta, the mountain of death. People rain off of that mountain. People drowning coming through. It's very dangerous. But the only reason that people are able to come through is because we, the United States, I want to be very clear. The NGOs are the ones physically doing it, but I want to be crystal clear, not ambiguous. It was the United States keeping the Darien Gap open. Let me say that crystal clear. United States was keeping Darien Gap open. United States was the one allowing the NGO. I was physically present when the Secretary of Homeland Security came down there. Alejandro Mayorkas landed right in front of me in his Black Hawk helicopters, went right in front of me into one of the camps where highest headquarters is at. Sorry, that's my alarm that we're coming on. Actually, but we're already on. So they came right there. I mean, so he was, remember, Alejandro Mayorkas, Alex Mayorkas, who used to be, he was a board member on HIAS, right? So he was a board member at Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, who has a headquarters down in Darien, and they also have one up in Panama City at Ciudad del Saber, which is unmarked in Ciudad del Saber. It used to be marked in Darien until we started writing about it. But so he was a board member. Our secretary, if you looked on highest.org, they used to, I think they probably still have it. There's a congratulatory letter to Alex Mayorkas from moving up from highest to becoming Secretary of Homeland Security. So he's the one giving not just top cover, openly providing money to increase the flow through the Darien Gap and bragging about it on his Twitter, right? Again, I was physically present. I have footage, photos, drone footage, everything of him in the city of the San Vicente camp, which I call China camp, because that's where most of the Chinese flow through that are invading, the ones who come through the Darien Gap anyway. And so, yeah, so it's the United States government that's doing it. And then you had people like some of the Trump administration blaming the Panama government, and people that are in his orbit like Posobiec. He got really angry when I'm like, hey, what are you talking about, Panama? We should do sanctions against Panama. Hello, McFly. We're the ones threatening Panama that if you don't keep it open, we're going to do sanctions against you. And then they turn right around and say, Panama's keeping it open. We're going to do sanctions against Panama. You're driving Panama into the hands of the Chinese Communist Party, who are invading Panama, and their population goes up, up, up. Now, you got to keep in mind, one of the main Chinese methods of war is just to move into places and marry in. It's that simple. It takes generations. It's extremely effective. It's an old that they will become you. That's what they call it. Actually, we will just become you. Like when the Qing dynasty invades or whatever, the Manchus, when they invade, the Han are like, no problem. You invaded. We'll just marry into you. It'll take a few generations. We'll slowly come back like the tide. They don't care what country it is or who nominally is in charge, as long as the Chinese people are there. That's what's happening in Ecuador. That's what's happening in Panama and the United States and Canada and Armenia and all over the place. They're just slowly coming in, slowly filling the bathtub, very, very slowly.
Let me ask you, just so, because some people might not understand where the Darien Gap is. You have Colombia, and then the Darien Gap is between Colombia and Panama, right? And then there's the canal, and then they go. Is
Right.
that correct?
Right. They
So,
call it the gap because there's a gap of about 100 kilometers with no road or no railway. No, it's just
right.
jungle. That's why they call it the gap. And now keep in mind, they're building a highway down there now. And so it's not through there yet. Now, again, one of the same guys, he's a retired Intel guy, lived in Panama all his life. One of the same guys that told me so many times, one of those guys with those long security clearances that don't know anything. He's one of the same guys that told me that we can't close the Darien Gap. And I'm like, hello, a company commander could close the Darien Gap. But he's the same guy that told me they can't build a road through the Darien Gap because it's too difficult. I'm like, we're looking at the Panama Canal. Our toes are practically in the water of the Panama Canal. And you're telling me they can't build a highway through the Darien Gap? Building a highway through the Darien Gap is child's play. Have you been to Louisiana? It's like building a highway through the Darien Gap is absolutely simple business. It's a function of money. The reason the Darien Gap has had no highway is not because it's difficult to build. It's absolutely simple to build. It's a matter of politics. We've wanted to keep it closed as a security buffer and as a biological buffer. That's the reason that there's no highway. Has zero to do with difficulty in building a railway or a road. It's being built right now as we speak.
So I get confused. Who is building the road through the Darien Gap, and is the China Bridge building? Are they related? I get confused when I hear you talk about that.
China
Who's
Bridge,
building the road?
the one that we call China Bridge, is the fourth bridge over the Panama Canal. It's right next to the Thatcher Ferry Bridge. Thatcher Ferry Bridge opened in 1962 or 63. That was the first bridge over the Panama Canal. It's at the Balboa area of Panama. That was opened by the United States. Then two other bridges were opened for a total of three bridges. And now the fourth bridge is being built right parallel to the Thatcher Ferry Bridge, which is on the Pacific side where Panama City is, right? And now that bridge will go right to the Hutchison Whampoa port that Trump said BlackRock is buying, which is bullshit. They're not buying it. It's China still has it. And immediately when Trump said that, people were like, "Yay, Trump! Bought the ports." And he didn't do anything. They still have them, right? And that bridge is being built as we speak. I get weekly updates with videos. It's still being built, right? And when that bridge is built, it goes down Highway 1 and it'll go right down to the Darien where those other two bridges are being built and the highway is being built. Now, China is building that bridge, is building Bridge 4. Now, Panamanians will constantly say, "You don't know what you're talking about. That's our bridge. We're building it." Okay, bullshit. That's China Bridge, number 4, period, full stop. China's building it, right? They're building it. And it's a debt trap, full stop. I know how China operates. I've written about them for years. Heck, I've written here, these 3 books are about how China does this stuff. I wrote all 3 of them, right? They're only in Japanese. They're not in English. They're more than 10 years old. So, I mean, I'm quite familiar with it. I've been all over China. I've been all over the world looking what China does. That bridge, number 4, is China Bridge. I don't care what the Panamanians say. It's China Bridge. And it's going right to their Hutchison Whampoa port, right? Now, that highway goes right down to the Darien. That's Highway 1, which goes right on up to Alaska, right? Or, feeds off into different places. But the Highway 1, is the one that'll eventually go to Colombia. That I've already got a book that China has published about it in Spanish and English. I've got it here somewhere, and it's got the map. They're building the road right now as we speak. They're going to connect to Colombia.
Who's building the road then? I got that China's doing the bridge. Who's building the road in the Darien?
Highway 1 was built
Right.
by us.
Right.
It is being improved now. When I asked the Panamanian government, who's building those 2 bridges? For instance, I'm the one that found the bridges that you see in the news now. I found them because I go down to the Darien Gap all the time, and I kept looking in this one area. I was like, well, if I were going to build bridges here, I would do it right here. So I kept going down there, and one day I found them, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I saw some mud tracks on Highway 1, actually, and I followed the mud tracks off the road, and I'm like, bingo, there it is, right? So launched the drone. There you go. There's another bridge over there that they're building. So I drove back up to Panama City that day, and I talked with people in the government. I said, who's building this bridge? Who's building? And they're like, we're not building a bridge down there. And I'm like, yeah, you are. And they're like, no, we're not. And I'm like, look, you see this mud on my boots? I was just there like 7 hours ago. You know what I mean? I mean, seriously, I was just you're building 2 bridges right now, and they're lined up right on the map that China has published where they're going to build to Colombia, right? Now, they're like, and then finally they're like, oh yeah, there is a bridge being built. They weren't lying. I think the ones that I talked with didn't even know about it, right? So, I mean, it's not hidden. It's not like secret. The bridge is open now. The first bridge is now open. I mean, I got a video, I don't know, month and a half ago with traffic going over the bridge. Everybody's celebrating. The Indians are celebrating down there. So, I mean, who's building it? It's clear China's doing it. Who's actually funding it? I don't know. They probably got America, as stupid as we are, paying for it. But the Panamanians, when I've asked who's paying for it, they're like, I don't know. I mean, so who's paying for it?
So the 100 kilometers of the Darien Gap, that is this treacherous area, there's a road being built through there. Is that
Yep.
correct?
That is absolutely correct. Now, again,
we don't
people
know
deny it. People deny it, and they're wrong. I don't care who's denying it. I don't care if the president of Panama is denying it. He hasn't denied it. He's not. I haven't seen him lie about stuff down there. But I mean, I don't care who says it's not being built. It is 100% being built. It's very easy to find out. If you're in Panama City, drive down there and go look yourself. If you're not, fly to Panama City, drive down there and look yourself. And it's about from the airport there in Panama City, it'll take you about 4 hours to get to it. And you'll be down at the end of the road and you can see it yourself, right? And then you can look at historic maps. You look at the Chinese map, they're clearly connecting it. You can look at videos on TikTok and whatnot. They're showing how they're going to connect it. It's like they're not hiding it anymore. It's just that people keep denying it, even though there's like TikTok videos with the maps and how beautiful it's going to be and how they're going to take care of the wildlife down there and all that stuff.
So that will, once that's done, then that will facilitate it that much easier to come up, the migration to come up from all the South American
Invasion.
countries.
Yeah. Invasion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And
I
so
know you call it invasion already.
Routes and resources. Yeah. And so it's clearly being built. And now you'll have the Panama Canal, which is one of the most important. Panama itself is one of the most important places on planet Earth for the United States and for many people, including China and Japan, where I'm at now, Japan. Japan is the number 3 customer. The number 2 customer through Panama Canal is China. And the number 1 customer is United States. This is that important to us. Panama is that important to the United States. And our ancestors knew it. That's why they built the Panama Canal, right? That's why they built it and had the army stationed down there, right? We made Panama. We made Panama on November 3rd, 1903. It used to be part of Colombia. Panama was part of Colombia, but Colombia didn't want to play ball. And so we're like, well, we'll just make a new country. So we sponsored a rebellion, boom, made Panama, made a treaty with Panama that we keep that 10 miles right there where the canal is, and Republic of Panama, you run it. So they use the US dollar. They still use the US dollar. We wanted Panama to be a stable, nice place because we wanted stability and security for our canal because it's this important. The Panama Canal for the United States is like the Suez Canal for most of the world, right? It's that important. Remember, Suez Canal opened in 1869. And that was another impossible canal. Anyway, it was opened. And now the Suez Canal is obviously the Suez, Panama, Bab el-Mandeb, Strait of Gibraltar, Turkish Straits, Strait of Malacca, Danish Straits. These things are, and obviously Strait of Hormuz, these things are amazingly important. They're the top 7 in the world. And of course, going around the tip of Africa as well, right? These if you can control those choke points like Panama and Suez and Strait of Hormuz and Strait of Malacca, you'll be a long way down the road in controlling the world. A long way, right? China is going hardcore for Panama.
I got it. So you get rid of we get out of the United Nations, we get rid of the International Office of Migration from Fort Clayton area, we get rid of the NGOs. Now we've got China, and I thought you said some part Israel has a component in the canal. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I heard that
Not
wrong.
Israel, not Israel, but Zionist. Because remember, Zionist is a political. It's some sort of structure that nobody seems to quite understand because it's got many parts. Like any large international organization does, it has components that fight each other. That it has components that synergize with each other. They kill each other. The Zionists kill each other regularly. Keep in mind, Zionism doesn't mean Judaism. That's what the Zionists want people to think because that's their top cover. In reality, Zionism is an entity, right? It's a Borg, like the Republican Party, let's say, but it's more international and like a lot more. And keep in mind, the bulk of Zionists seem to be Christian Zionists, actually, in the United States. I mean, the bulk of on the pie chart, nobody seems to know the actual numbers, but it actually is quite obvious that the bulk of Zionists are Christian Zionists. And who are part of a large SIOP. Keep in mind, Suez Canal opened in 1869. It was immediately starting to be called the spinal cord of the British Empire, right? Because remember, the British Empire at that time was the empire. It was the biggest empire in the world at that time. And when the Suez Canal opened, that both energized the empire even more because they could trade more efficiently with fewer ships. And their empire grew. But it was also a weak point. It was a spinal cord. It was both strength and weakness. So, the British were worried that, the Egypt would take it, which they did. And they were worried that it would create wars. And that's why, when Theodore Herzl came around in 1897 with this book on making, a homeland for the Jews and creation of Zionism for that purpose, that form of Zionism, that was part of a British intelligence exercise to make this happen, because Britain wanted to control the Suez Canal and that area, right? Now, this is an old game in demographic warfare. British were good at it. Romans were good at it. I mean, some people say, Britain is old Rome, basically, and the United States is old Rome, but they were very good at it, right? And so moving populations around, that's normal business for big time players. Now, for low level players that don't study much, they think, oh, no, that's conspiracy. Those people are not even in the game. They don't even realize that populations are regularly moved around, like constantly. It's never ended for centuries, right? All these books right here are about that, right? All these books right here are about moving populations around. And I mean, it's normal business. And what I'm getting to is, they did an information war. Hey, this can be your homeland. Move back over to, not back, but move to Israel. Take a home. We did the same thing. Remember, in the 1890s and early 1900s with the Dawes Act and the Dawes Rolls with the 5 civilized tribes. We were getting the tribes to go to reservations, so we would give them land, like 165 acres. That's when suddenly you had a bunch of Scots-Irish people, which is my lineage. Scots-Irish suddenly are like, okay, I'm Cherokee. I want my 165 acres. And, people are like, okay, are you in the Dawes Rolls? I actually have the Dawes Rolls, the original book. And if your name is in there, you can get some land. That's the same thing we did in America, which have been done in other places. That was being done with Israel. In other words, move to Israel, get your land. And suddenly you got Maliakovsky, Netanyahu, moving over to, Argentina. That's a Maliakovsky too. Maliakovsky, Netanyahu, the same name. They suddenly are changing their names, and they're, hey, but the people that then move to Israel, many of those guys, they're whiter than I am, and they're throwing out the term anti-Semitism and all this stuff, and you can't but it's all about routes and resources. It has nothing to do with Holy Land. It has not. The British were very good at doing that. They would use populations like Scots-Irish, like my descent. They used the Scottish as borderland people to fight the Irish. The Scottish married into the Irish. They became, over a long period of time, the Scots-Irish, which is a different breed of dog. And then they brought the Scots-Irish over to America to fight Indians like Cherokee, which they intermarried there too. And so that's why you have names in Texas named after Scots-Irish people, right? I mean, so the British have been good about this for a long time. They're not the only ones, but that's what happened with Israel. So you move these people in, you give them an identity. Oh, you're God's chosen people. You're all this stuff. You're the smartest people in the world. Now they're pumping them with dope. They're filled with dope. They got the jabs and everything else, right? They are useful idiots, just like the Scottish were useful idiots against the Irish, and then the Scots-Irish were useful idiots against that's my lineage, against the Cherokee and the others. It's moving populations around is normal business for almost the biggest players.
So then talk to me about China's presence in the Panama Canal. I was born in Hong Kong. I know that, I guess, Hong Kong, two businesses run either end of the canal, but that really they have to answer to China, if that's correct.
Hutchison, Whampoa, right? I mean, so the two ports, keep in mind, there's multiple ports in the Panama Canal, 7, I think, and the two on the end of the canals, on the Atlantic side, Caribbean side, let's say, and on the Pacific side, the south side, the other side's the north side. A lot of people think Panama is east-west, but it's actually the predominant axis is not north-south, it's east-west. So the Pacific is on the south side. So those are the two most important. That's Boardwalk and Park Place. Those two ports on either side of the canal, and there's reasons for that. And remember, there's a railway that connects those two that goes about 50 miles long, right? And so that railway used to be the most profitable railway on Earth. Actually, I don't know if it still is, but it could be. I don't know. but that railway connects those two ports. What happens is many ships will come to the Pacific side and drop off and pick up cargo, like at the Hutchison Whampoa port that China operates, and then they put those containers on the ship, on the train, and they go to another ship on the Atlantic side. So you got the train going back and forth with containers, so these ships don't have to go through the canal, right? So you got Pacific side ships and Atlantic side ships. They're connected by a train. So if you control those two ports, a lot of your ships don't have to go through, right? So you're making a lot of money, right? And you're controlling the ends of the canal. Now, Panama does not operate the canal. So when Panama says China does not operate the canal. So when people say China operates the canal, that's false. Panama definitely operates the canal. However, China operates those ports, and they also they intensely influence Panama, and they're moving into. Remember, the every day more Chinese are moving into Panama, and remember, one of the primary forms of warfare for Han Chinese is just to move in. That goes back centuries, right? This is old. They don't care who runs they don't get, like when the Qing dynasty overrun Han Chinese. They don't care. Like, okay, they run this land for now. Keep marrying in, send more people in. We'll get it back later, and they'll build up the infrastructure, right? That's how they roll. They're long game, and I don't mean long game like 50 years. They're like over the horizon thinkers, like, multi-century game. Not just the Chinese. A lot of the globalists they don't think in 5-year plans. 5-year plans are for stupid university communists, right? Think 5-year plans is a long plan. No, we're talking over the horizon. I was talking with Catherine Austin Fitz yesterday. She called up, and actually we're going to talk tonight. And she was talking about the same thing. And she's talked about this before. Catherine Austin Fitz, you'll see her talk about these multi-century plans, right? Cathedral building, as she calls it, right? And which is interesting because that's what Misako and I called it. I don't know if we picked that up somewhere, but yes, basically these plans, they're not even planting trees for your children to sit under. They're planting trees for your great 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 grandchildren to sit under, right? These are process wars. They're not like all these Indian wars that people talk about. They're like Anglo-Powhatan War or whatever. There's so many wars with the Comanches or whatever. It's really one big war. It's a big process war that takes centuries. And one of the major weapons, by the way, is intoxicants like firewater for the Indians.
So your Secretary of State, I don't know if that's the right power person. What are you going to do in in the Panama Canal to make sure it's permanent? What are you going to, you boot China out? You're going to bring military in there? What are you going to do?
You're going to
Or what
have to
would you do?
use, you're going to have, first of all, we have to build muscle at home. First of all, we have to knock down the drugs. One of the reasons that Americans are so weak is they're just intoxicants constantly. The psychological remember, intoxicants are the grease and the rocket fuel of psychological operations, right? So we have to strengthen ourselves, but we have to safeguard Panama Canal. First, relationship with Japan that's why I'm in Japan. I'm not randomly in Japan. Some people say, oh, you're in Japan because it's safe. I'm like, again, I don't know what planet you come from, but China is threatening to missile this place right now, right? China is threatening to take Okinawa. China is threatening to take Taiwan, which is, down the road, basically, this is not the safe place to be. Japan is absolutely so. But what I'm getting to is when it comes to Panama, I would absolutely safeguard Panama. How would I do this? First, I would get the very serious people around the table. Military people, probably have to fire a bunch of the generals, but get the very serious intelligence and military people around the table, business people around the table, food people. I want everybody at the table to make a plan. First of all, what's going on here? Exactly who's who in the zoo, who's doing what, how are we going to take back control of this cockpit, right? But first you have to gather information, map it all out, and then make a game plan. And now I would do that immediately. Day one, I would assemble a very serious team of people and get them around the table. And I would be like, I'm going to keep you guys for a couple of weeks. We're putting maps up. You can bring your staffs, and then we'll have our classified meetings or whatnot. But we are going to make a plan on how we're going to secure Panama. And we're going to make a plan on how we're going to secure some other things as well. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. But remember, this is holistic. There's other parts of this. There's other components like over in Thailand and Taiwan and here in Japan. These are all part of the same war. The Suez Canal, obviously, Strait of Malacca, obviously. I mean, Europe is gone, right? Europe is actually, we have to, there are so many kill shots like geoengineering with the weather modification. That's quite real. People are like, that's conspiracy theory. It is absolutely not conspiracy theory at all. It's like absolutely real. And, I was physically present, by the way. U.S. aid paid for some infrastructure to be built in Afghanistan. A friend of mine got the contract and built it. It was an old Green Beret friend of mine, know him quite well. So I flew over there in one of his airplanes. I was already in Afghanistan. And I was there with a guy named Tim Lynch, a friend of mine, former retired Marine officer. And so just me and Tim, we're out there with a bunch of Baluch people near the Iranian border and at a grand opening of this water infrastructure. And the Baluch people turned the valves, multiple valves, and they turned off the water to Iran. Yeah, right there. I'm like, wow, that wasn't cloud seeding. That was built water infrastructure, and I was making photos, which I've published those photos, and I've published them. And they're actually turned. You know how Iran responded the next day by shooting missiles at us, right? At Zaranj and Nimruz. That may or may not be in the news. Nimruz province in Afghanistan is in that southwest corner on the border between Iran and Pakistan. So it's Afghanistan corner of Pakistan and Iran, right? And so that's where Nimruz is. It's the Wild West out there. But anyway, so I mean, these wars are all over the place. Like for instance, you see what I'm getting to is Panama is not in a vacuum. Like you see what's going on now with Armenia and the trip, it's called trip, the Trump corridor and all these sorts of things. This is global, and you can't look at this like in a 5-year plan. We have to look at this as a process. First of all, Chinese out of our universities, H5, H1, all these the H1B visas gone, right? Border closed, mass deportations begin, right?
So how do you, so two things. So how do you close the border any more than it is now? What would you do at the border? Let's say the southern border from Arizona to California to whatever. How would you close that? What would you do different, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Many things. One is people that are hiring these people, so that are inside of the United States. You want to make a positive pressure out, right? You want to make a positive pressure out. Like we're going to be raiding everywhere. You know what I mean? And if your business is hiring them, you're going to get a huge fine, right? And we understand that there's people that need to pick tomatoes. Got it. No problem with that. But when all these people are just taking American jobs, like software jobs in Texas and all over the place, got to go, all of them, and just out. And so that's one thing. Positive pressure out. Putting people in prison that have overstayed. Like we'll build camps for you. Put you in prison. Send you off. So no money to them. If you get hurt and go to the hospital and you're an illegal alien, you're going to get deported with a cast on your leg, right? Now that's been a point of contention in the United States for many years. They're always like, oh, you're going to prevent people from getting medical care, and have a nice day. It's like, this is how I would treat that. Like, this is big boy. This is war, right? If you get hurt and you want medical treatment and you go to the hospital, you'll get your medical treatment and you'll be deported with a cast on your leg, right? We'll give you your humanitarian and a flight back, because no. At some point, you got to let your testosterone flow, right? We have to defend our own borders. And I'm not going to get caught up in all the sad stories of, well, Jimmy's whatever, bye, and we have to defend our own. This is a war. The Chinese are coming in growing dope all over the United States. They're growing dope all over the United States. And then I hear these clowns constantly talking about, oh, it's about my freedom, man. Okay, I bought this bong in Kyoto in a store. Look at that. I just bought it a few weeks ago. This is a little bong, right? That's the actual bong. That's the pipe to smoke it out of its head. Bought this one in Bangkok, I don't know, a month and a half ago, something like that. Again, you can buy dope and marijuana. You can buy all sorts of stuff in Bangkok in thousands of stores now. I actually walked in, Masako and I walked in, and we got prescriptions at the cash register. There's a doctor behind the counter in Bangkok. There's many of these things. You can order it on the apps. You can order dope and pizza on the app now in Bangkok, right? So we go into this store, and the doctor's right there. He gave me a prescription for something, amnesia or something. I can't remember. And he gave Misako a prescription for anorexia. Didn't ask her a word, just like anorexia. It's like, and so they gave us prescription because you're supposed to have a prescription, right? But what I'm getting to is all this stuff. These are actually WMD. The actual intoxicants, whether they're prescriptions or whether it's alcohol or whatever, this is being used to dumb down our population. That's why you have dope heads like Joe Rogan with tens of millions of followers out there pushing dope. Him and Rocket Boy Elon Musk, right? Who talks openly about his ketamine problem. If anybody thinks Elon Musk is really the mastermind behind all that crap, I got some more rockets to sell you. I mean, there is no way some dope head who wasn't smart enough not to take the death jab. Elon Musk says he took 2 death jabs, right? And he got very sick from it, right? And he said he couldn't get to his gigafactory in Germany without taking the death jab, right? Now, let's say Misako and I were in Germany at the same time. We didn't take it. We were all over Europe multiple times, never took the jab. But Rocket Boy, who's got his own rockets, he's got his own private jets and all that stuff. He's got a multi-billion-dollar gigafactory in Germany. He can't figure out how to do it. And this is the guy that wants to put brain chips in us, the guy who smokes dope with Joe Rogan live in front of millions of people, the guy who actually brags about his ketamine problem, and the guy who took death jabs. He can't figure out how to do it, but he's the guy that wants to put brain chips in us, right? Now, again, if I were Elon Musk and I were that smart, well, I was smart enough not to take the death jab, and I was in the same country he was at the same time, right? This is how I would have played that. I would have said, hey, German government, my name is Elon Musk. I own that factory over there, or at least I'm the one in charge of it. And I'm going to be there on Monday morning at about 8 o'clock in my private jet. I'm going to land over at some airport. Okay. And if I'm detained and you're asking me for my papers for these death jabs, I will close the factory. It will close 1 minute after I'm detained. You're going to detain me. My people will be watching, and it's closed. It'll be like that. And it'll be closed as long as you're giving me a problem about coming to my factory without the death jab. And none of my people will have to get it. But no, he was pushing it. Elon Musk tweeted, the science is unequivocal. I think that's verbatim about the death jabs. He was pushing the death jabs, right? Does anybody really think he's that guy? That he's the smartest guy on earth, the richest guy on earth, and yet he can't, he basically he can't even figure out how not to take a death jab. It doesn't add up. The math doesn't add up. All these variables equal smartest, richest guy on earth. No, they just don't. They don't. They equal all these variables. Can't figure out how to get to Germany. Ketamine, dope, death jab, push death jab, many other things. Marries every girl who walks by and equals actor. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just going with the math, man.
So
That's
tell me,
modern
I've
math.
heard, so let me talk to me about deportation. I've heard you talk about like, all right, sending someone on a single plane, but I've heard you talk about having barges or ships go up the rivers in the United States and put people on beaches somewhere massively if you had to really do it.
United States has a wonderful river system. That's one of the reasons our economy is so great, such as the Mississippi. And we have many great ports, Los Angeles, San Francisco, up the Mississippi. We've got them in Florida, right? And ships are the cheapest way to get people out, right? Camp of the Saints, reverse style. I would be loading those people up on planes, trains, automobiles, getting them to the ships. And that's it. And all the Venezuelans are going back to Venezuela. And if Venezuela doesn't like it, we'll clear the beaches. We'll clear the beach and put them back into Venezuela. We're not going to hurt anybody. Unless they fight back, and then you could get hurt. But at the end of the day, they're yours. You used them to invade our country, and we're sending them back to you, right? And you're not going to know which ones we recruited, right? You know what I mean? So this is how you got to play big boy rules and not be Mr. Softy about it, right? You got to just be like, no, we're going to, you know why nobody bothers and even bothers China or about Russia about taking a bunch of invading migrants? Because they know they won't. They're just going to be like, get out of here, fool. If you say to China, you're going to take your fair share of Somalis, they're going to be take your fair share of my Chinese boot up your ass, right? They're not gonna be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. We feel so bad for not taking Somalis into China. We need some more in Shanghai. They're not gonna do that.
So let's go to our northern border. What do we do with that?
Canada's
I mean,
gone. That's the biggest border in the world, I think. I don't know. It's certainly our biggest border. It's a huge border, and I've been up there looking at it. I mean, people Canada's gone. The Canada we knew is gone. It does not exist anymore. I mean, the idea that the old Canada that we used to know, it's gone. I mean, China's taken their part. India's taken their part. You got other components that are taking their parts here and there. It's being divided up. It's being fractured. You're going to end up seeing war in Canada between Indians. Like you're going to see Sikhs and Hindus fighting each other, and Vishnites and Shivites fighting each other, and Chinese and Indians fighting each other. There's a lot of Iranians up, near Vancouver, and there's all kinds of components, right? They're all going to be doing their different things. They've all got their own Anthro Insula, their human islands. Keep in mind, Chinese are not Chinese. The Chinese have many subcomponents too. You've got, Taiwanese who are, don't call them Chinese. You got Hong Kongers. You grew up in Hong Kong. I mean, there's many different sorts of Chinese. It's not like all the Europeans are the same, right? It's not like all Arabs are the same. Actually, I said one time during the Iraq War, I don't even know what an Arab is. Now, a bunch of people that knew what an Arab was, they, started flaming the world like, he doesn't even know what an Arab is. And he's talking about the Iraq War. And I'm like, okay, hero, tell me what an Arab is in 2 hours or less, right? You know what I mean? I mean, if you actually know anything about this, you're going to be very slow with your words in describing what an Arab is, or it's going to take a while to unfold it. What is an actual Arab? What's a Chinese? What's a European? Is a European somebody who grew up in Canada for 4 generations? I don't know. Some of it's what's art, but so again, a lot of this anthropological warfare that's unfolding is by design, and a lot of it is just emergent, right? With the open borders, you got people flowing through that are sort of, like volunteer siege, you might say. And then there's others who are clearly being cleared off of some place to go into another place. So you're getting 2 values from it. One is clearing them out of some place in Africa, say that where somebody might want to do a mine or something. You get that out, get them out of there, and put them off in Canada, put them off in the United States, put them off in Europe. So it's not just, this is artfully done with some of the components, right? It's not just randomly, hey, let's take everybody under the sun. They're taking as much as they can, people from places that they have an interest in to places that they have an interest in. This is sort of like geoengineering or terraforming of humans, right? Demographic farming.
so when you were at the border, like, all right, there's people just fleeing a country because they want to go to a better place. And then there's military age young men from China, from Middle Eastern countries, from African countries. So you talk about China camp. It sounds like it's like a military base almost, or I'm not sure what that means. And how many of those have you saw come across the border? Would you ballpark guess as a percentage of the people going over the border?
Well, during Biden's time, about 3 of those 4 years, because we have records for a little over 3 of the 4 years, we've got records of 1.04 million coming through of Chinese. Of that, more than 40,000 were Chinese. So 1.04 million, and of those, over 40,000, less than 41,000 were Chinese, right? And now
But
we've
are
got
those but are those military age people? Or are those just, I mean, because over the border 3 or 4 years, you hear anywhere from 10 million to 30 million. But I'm talking about not
That's
just
just
somebody fleeing.
Darien. That's just Darien. That's just
Okay.
Darien. That doesn't include people who flew up to Nicaragua first or through Mexico first. Many of them came on student visas, came through Bahamas. Many come up through Bahamas. Many come through Canada. Many come in on ships. They come in on student visas. They come in on tourist visas. So they're just birth tourism out in the islands in the Pacific. There's many, many, many ways that Chinese and others come into the United States. I'm only talking about Darien. We have records of 1.04 million. And some of the people that came through there, like Jose Ibarra, he murdered Lake and Riley, right? Went to prison for it. I I see the bus number he went on. I mean, we've got his records. I got his passport number, right? And his two brothers came in months later. I mean, we know what bus they got on. They got on the same bus together. So Jose came through, murdered Lake and Riley, did whatever he did to her, and then his two brothers came as well, and they're all three in prison now. But the unless the brothers were released, I don't believe they have been, but I don't know about that. But they were in prison. So what I'm getting to is a lot of the crimes that I've seen on the news, and I'll look it up and say, well, there he is. That guy came through the Darien Gap too. It's quite interesting. And so but what I'm getting to is the Chinese, different structures come through. Like the Haitians, when they come through, they're completely disorganized. Now it's not disorganization that gets them through, but the Haitians themselves are, they're pell mell all over the place, right? But so but the Chinese, they are like a pipeline within a pipeline, right? So they come in as a structure. They come in, they have a cultural firmware that's been going around the world for centuries. And if you talk with Chinese, which I have in detail about this, how does it work? Like one guy in Thailand I talked with, let me tell you I said, how is it that you became very wealthy I was talking with him in Thailand, but because he was American citizen, but how is it that you and your family became very wealthy in the United States? How did you do it? So what's your cultural firmware? He said, this is how it works. In short, when you're young, your mother teaches you to write down every penny that comes and goes. If you find it, earn it, lose it, steal it, stolen from you, whatever. Every penny, you write it down. So you become very conscious of your money. You become very conscious of, how much things cost. And so you're taught from a young age to be conscious of your money. So it's little katas like that, you might say. And then as you get older, they teach you how to actually do business, and that's how to do accounting and that sort of stuff. And which is what you're being taught when you're right there. But then he said when his father came over to the United States, his father was quite poor. But this is how it works with a lot of Indians too. It works with some of the Jewish structures as well. There's different structures that work like this, have the same sort of structures, where you come in and like the Chinese will work in a restaurant. Like some Chinese might sponsor you to come over and you'll work in X restaurant or whatever, or you might just get a job when you show up. And there'll be a bunch of Chinese that live upstairs all together, all piled in, but they save every penny. They've been taught how to do that. And then at some point, they know how to run the restaurant. The Chinese community will help them get a loan to open their own restaurant or whatever, or their own store or whatever. And then they become part of that next level of Chinese who are part of now we have financial clout together and political clout together. So they agglomerate, you might say, they're Anthro-Insula, the human island. So they have these little islands that pop up all over the world: Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. I mean, a huge amount of the Thais are actually of Chinese descent, or they're mixed, right? And they end up being in power structures of all these countries, right? Like Panama right now, clearly the Chinese are getting the mass to, they have a lot of political clout now in Panama. So, but they're in the accumulation stage. They're in about the seventh or eighth generation of Chinese, or let's say not generation, but wave of China. I was talking with one Chinese author down there, I don't know, 6 months ago in Panama, something like that. I spent, I don't know, all day with her. And I was talking about the different structures. She was from the first wave. She doesn't even speak Mandarin anymore, right? Although her apartment's all decorated Mandarin and all that stuff. Her and her husband are, they live in Panama City, but they're from that first generation back 1850s, 1860s, right? So, railroad time and all that, right? Then there's been these other waves that come at different times. The latest wave, she said, doesn't even like her wave because they're a totally different culture. And she doesn't even speak Mandarin. She sees herself as Chinese. Now, keep in mind, the Chinese Communist Party works very hard to win over people like her because they want them to be part of the base, and they're also part of the local structures as well, whatever country that is: Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, United States. So this is all part of these structures that you can come into a ready built structure. The Chinese, they already have their own financial structures. They have their own banks. They have their own communications networks. They have their own gold exchanges, right? They're sophisticated players. They've got a firmware that's been going for centuries very effective. Then you've got others that come in, like the Haitians. They're just all over the place. They got no organization at all.
So is the Chinese doing this because the Communist Party is this is their 100-year plan, or is it?
Way beyond
I
100
mean,
year plan. I mean, this is just their firmware. I mean,
mhm.
it's just it does. It's like no end in sight. Does kudzu have a 100-year plan, or kudzu just grows? Kudzu grows and plants more kudzu seeds. You know what I mean? Kudzu does kudzu stuff. So I mean, it doesn't necessarily have any in place. It's just that its firmware is to take over the world very, very slowly, and it's slowly doing. And the Indians want to do the same thing, but the Indians are more fractured, and because the Indians are so many, and actually Chinese too, are many, many different groups, and so that's why the Han Chinese have worked so long to try to persuade everybody that they're Han Chinese. They're trying to persuade the people, the Japanese in Okinawa, that they're Han Chinese now. They've been doing an information program for years, trying to persuade. Um, my wife Masako, she's from Okinawa. They're trying to persuade her she's Chinese. She's like, I'm Japanese, 100%. It's like, and so they're trying. So they publicly attack her sometimes, that sort of thing. Have tried to track her down in Okinawa. She was gone when they did. Just stuff like that, right?
I mean, when I listen, it's like it's like an impossible task. You got this.
It's not impossible, but you have to recognize it. You have to study. If a sufficient number of serious Americans study how this works, we can counter
Mhm.
it. I mean, they're not omnipotent and they're not omniscient. In fact, I think in many ways we're far more effective. We just don't know how they operate because we operate in different ways. And we've been focused on manifest destiny and all those sorts of things, just doing our thing for centuries, right? And meanwhile, they're just doing their kudzu thing, right? They have a different way of operating. And so if you understand how it operates, like they're kudzuing Tibet. I've been up to Tibet. They're doing the same in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs, right? They're doing the same with Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, where you grew up, they were getting this. I was in some of the Hong Kong schools. I spoke at one. They asked me to speak. They don't want them to speak Cantonese. They want them to speak Mandarin. And like, you're speaking Cantonese, you're basically a redneck. You know what I mean? They don't want the Cantonese speakers to. They want the Cantonese speakers to feel like low life, right? They want and so that's how they roll. It's anthropological warfare, and the brainwashing is quite real. But once you actually understand how it works, you can recognize brainwashing, and then if you're really going to go Sun Tzu brainwashing about it, brainwash your brainwasher. It's not like they're omnipotent or omniscient. They'll use certain techniques on us. We can reverse them back like a headlock. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm going to be your victim because you know how to do brainwashing. I can learn it too. I can do MMA with you. You know what I mean? It's like you know what I mean. And
So,
brainwash your brainwasher. Go Sun Tzu on them.
all right. So, well, I mean, there's so many thoughts running through my mind. I was like, all right, so you're not president of the United States. I mean, so how do like? I mean, do people see this? The leaders see this? I mean, I'm looking at them going, they don't see this, or they're sold out because they're getting some benefit from this mass migration. I mean, why would Alejandro Mayorkas do it? I mean, does he get a bunch of money? I mean, just that.
He's basically Mayorkas is basically an idiot. Now, keep in mind, he's the children of Sephardic Jews that came from Cuba. So he was picked for that role, right? So he's like, "Oh, you're a victim of the whole world. Everybody wants to kill Jews or whatever." You know what I mean? Despite your Department of Homeland Security chief now, right? It's like Obama and his wife or husband or whatever it was walking down Air Force One, going, "Oh, it's so bad to be black. Everybody hates us." Like, dude, you just flew in on Air Force One. You live in the White House, right? You know what I mean? You're in charge of the U.S. military, right? But the brainwashing is quite intense. This constant, we're the victim. Like the Chinese do it too. Professional victims are always predators. So the first thing you want to do is mitigate this professional victimhood that's used as a weapon. It's used as a massive weapon, right? It's used as a casus belli to do anything that you want, right? Once you see yourself as a professional victim, you have no borders with what you'll do. You have no morals, right? Within your own group, you might have morals that you exercise, but outside the wire, they're all enemy, right? We can do anything we want to them. We can manipulate them, lie to them, stick them with death jabs, whatever. You need to fight on the firmware level is one thing. I mean, really, on the mythological level, firmware level. You have to really, this takes a real serious group of people that are enabled over a long period of time. I'm talking like generations, right? Again, not going to fix it. It didn't get messed up in a year. It's never been like utopia never existed. Obviously, you're not shooting for that, but definitely shooting for much. And by the way, the same techniques that are used for evil when it comes to mind manipulation can be used for good. The exact same techniques that are used to split families can be used to bind and bond families, right? The same exact techniques. For instance, one of the things I've seen to their great credit with missionaries around the world, both in these old books and in just what I see when I go places, is the missionaries, Catholic and Protestant, they always stand up against intoxicants. Like they always go, they draw a red line right there. They're like, this line you shall not cross, right? And you can do all these other things, but not that. Don't give fire water to the Indians. Don't give opium to the local people in Formosa or whatever. Now keep in mind, supplied answers are a big part of information wars. Supplied answers. Supplied answers are answers that automatically come out of people's minds and you don't realize it was supplied to you, right? It's a firmware that's installed like a virus. Here's an example. I'll say something, and then this will come to the minds of many people watching. I'm quite certain. The Chinese are deeply involved with drug trafficking into the United States and into other places, right? Now, something that will immediately pop into many people's minds are the Chinese are just getting even for the British Opium Wars. That's a supplied answer. Now, let's get down to some reality. First of all, professional victims are always predators. The Chinese were deeply involved with opium trade before the Opium Wars with the British, during the Opium Wars with the British, and after the Opium Wars with the British, and still. I got a whole section of my library on it. I just was talking with Al Johnson about it this morning for about 2 hours on his podcast, and he studies this immensely. He's talking about how they called the Chinese called the opium their special product, and apparently they had like 30,000 acres of land. This was after World War II, planted just for opium, so that they could raise money. They were raising huge amounts of gold and silver off of opium because opium is actually money in some context. So what I'm getting to is the whole structure of brainwashing. You have to understand the components of it. A good way to start is to read the book Rape of the Mind by Just Merleau from 1956. He talks about the supplied answers. Another supplied answer is, well, let's talk about Trump still pushing the death jabs. Now, one thing that'll pop into a lot of people's mind is Fauci fooled him. That's a supplied answer. Okay, this is almost 2026. We're past the middle of November, or 2/3 into November here of 2025. It's been years now. Fauci fooled him. His advisors fooled him. Okay, that's a supplied answer. That's brainwashing 101. Or how about the cannabis? Another supplied answer is, well, it's good for medicinal purposes. It has medicinal purposes, right? Now, keep in mind, I've got book after book here that talked about the medicinal uses of cocaine, marijuana, heroin. We're talking more than 100 years ago, 125, 30 years ago, right? I mean, actually, I've got a lot of material on this that's very old in old books. It's the same idea is always used, right? It's always, well, the heroin's good for medicinal the name heroin was designed by a pharmaceutical company, right? You can look up in the 1991, wait a minute, why don't we just do it? It's right here, come to think of it. This is a Scientific American I read in I bought this is all the 1991 Scientific Americans, these two books. I bought, these are the 1991 editions of Scientific American. So here's one. I used to read all the Scientific Americans. I used to read them cover to cover until I realized how cooked they were. So this is July 1991, Scientific American. Oh, here we go. When the local druggists sold heroin legally, right? So I remember I read that when it came out in 1991. I was out of the Army already, and I read that. And I was kind of cognizant of brainwashing and all this sort of, and how drugs were used in war. Not as cognizant as I am now. But you go in here, and I read that article back then, and then I read it again. I read it several times. And I'm like, did that really happen? Then I started studying more. But here's the article: Opium, cocaine, and marijuana in U.S. history. Can you read it? Is it focused?
Yeah. Yeah, I can
Look
see
at
it.
that. So that's 1991 in Scientific American. It's a very long article, and here it's talking about how opium is the name was invented. This is this is actual old not opium, but heroin. How the name heroin the name was invented to sell another way of selling them. And anyway, I've got quite a lot of books on this, like a lot, and so because this is one of the primary weapons in war is intoxicants, right? And and it says here the subtitle is over the past 200 years, Americans have twice accepted, then vehemently rejected drugs. So twice we accepted it. Understanding these dramatic historical swings provides perspective on our current reaction to drug use. So basically, what happens is there'll be a period when everybody's like, "Hey, cocaine's great. It's great for mood. It's great for sleeplessness or sleeping. I don't know, and it's good for weight loss." I remember they talk about cocaine for weight loss in the mid 1800s. I'm like, did they need to lose weight back then? What were they, like, overweight? They were like 8% body fat or something. It's like there. I guess there were people that were overweight back then too. But so they're always about medicinal purposes. And then there's a period where, hey, this is the wonder drug. There's always the wonder drug, right? This thing solves everything. It's the chemical, right? Imagine in the old stores, you could go into an old store, give me a case of that whiskey, Jim, and give me some of that cocaine, and give me a shotgun and some dynamite, right? And he's like, here you go, and have some coffin nails, right? I'll see you next week. Maybe flying through the sky. You used to be able to buy cocaine right in the stores, right? And it's funny when I've said, I use the term dope, and the young dope heads who don't know anything about dope will say, because they think they know a lot about dope because they're doped up. They're like, they think they're suddenly experts because, they know how to roll a joint. So they're an expert on it. So they'll say, you don't even use the term dope correctly. And they don't realize that in the old days, dope was it was a catch-all term, like Coke is a catch-all term for soft drinks in the South, right? And so it's like, and so dope, nobody seems to know where the term came from, but it seems to have been first applied for opium because it can be like putty. And you can, how you can put putty in a ship or whatever. Because if you've ever touched opium, which I've done quite a lot in Afghanistan, because we were capturing it all the time, and I'd be like, here, there it is again. I mean, and I was always asking people, how long does this stuff last? I asked DEA guys and everybody else, how long does this stuff last? Can you freeze it, heat it? And nobody seemed to know. Opium is kept as money, actually. It's a form of money like gold or silver, right? Some people actually keep strategic stocks of opium because it has a very long shelf life. And that much opium is worth a lot of money, right? But that much tomato is not. So you can load up your mule and take it over the Hindu Kush with opium. And by the way, this is an actual opium weight. This is several hundred years old. This was for this. If you drop this, it'll break your foot. I mean, this that'll break my table. And I got it. This is actual opium weights. I mean, this is a huge business, right? I got that in Thailand. Yeah, I bought this in an antique store in Thailand. It's an actual opium weight, right? And so, I mean, it's a huge industry selling opium, huge, and still is, right? And what I'm getting to is these are all part of the weapons that are used. But when you bring these things up, when it comes to brainwashing, again, the rocket fuel and the lubricant of psychological operations is intoxicants, whether that be alcohol, opium, cannabis, which people say, "Oh, you're going to outlaw weed, man." All right, okay, whatever, man. You're lost. These chemicals that are in this dope are unbelievable. They're clearly causing a great deal of psychosis, right? They're clearly causing a great deal of mental problems, and they are an actual weapon just as much as a B-52 is a weapon. But one of the things about intoxicants, and I think it's safe to say, everybody watching this has had personal experience with somebody in their family or themselves who had intoxicant problems. And if you had it in your family, even if it wasn't you, that's like getting a missile through your room through your window, right? Because if it's one of your parents or both of your parents have problems with intoxicants, it reduces everything about your household, everything, your ability to study, your ability to live peacefully, your ability to go to, have money, basically, right? This is a primary weapon in destroying cultures is intoxicants. Main way we beat the Indians, it wasn't with muskets, it was with fire water. We were just getting them drunk and getting them in debt traps. We used debt traps with whiskey. We'd be like, sure, I'll give you another bottle of whiskey, but yeah, I need 10 more beaver pelts, I need, or whatever. I need, and then we went out and shot their buffalo and everything else, moved them around different places. It was a very long process war. We got them in debt traps. We drunk them up. This is the same thing that happens around the world. And the Chinese are doing it across America now. The Chinese have done this. The Chinese have done this for centuries. And then with the supplied answer, oh, we're doing it because sorry, there's light shining through my bottle of water. the sunlight's coming through. That's what's it reflecting off? Oh, it's reflecting off water here. Actually, let me move that. So they're using the same techniques and tactics, right? They're actually growing dope. The Chinese who have come in, not just them, but the Chinese are doing it intensely in California, Oregon, Oklahoma, Maine. They're doing it everywhere. Atlanta, one got caught recently in Atlanta. I mean, but in some of the places, they're just doing it legally. They just come buy huge farms and grow marijuana. I was driving down the road a couple of years ago with Masako. We were in Canada. We were with a retired Canadian Army captain, and I smelled dope. I mean, like intensely. And I was like, is there dope in this car? And we'd been in it for quite a while. And suddenly I smelled thick, real smell of marijuana, right? And again, dope heads will go, that's not dope, man. Okay, whatever. So you have fun with that. And he said, no, there's greenhouses on the side of the road. There was huge greenhouses, like a long line on both sides of the road. We were going through like Greenhouseville, And I was like, you mean all these greenhouses are dope? I mean, it was so intense. It's just like unbelievable. Just smelling it going down the highway, right? They're growing that crap in such, and keep in mind, food prices are going up and they're selling dope. Makes sense if you're at war. It makes perfect sense if you're at war. If I wanted to destroy China, I would move to China and do that. If China was stupid enough to let you do it. But people that will give China a break. And by the way, when you hear people say, well, China's just doing it to get even, they always seem to say that. And it's like giving them a pass. It's like, well, China gets a pass. They're getting even. Well, they kill my family. Well, go ahead, kill my family. China's getting even for something I didn't do, but the British apparently did. The Chinese are pumping drugs into Thailand. Thailand wasn't involved in the British opium wars. They're pumping them into Taiwan as well, fentanyl, right? And they're pumping it here into Japan with lesser success, but it is getting in, right? And they're pumping it into Panama and other places, Argentina, right? We went down to an Argentina expo in November or December 2024. Big dope expo. They got all kinds of mushrooms and it's clearly targeting children. Clearly, like I published some of the photos the other day on my Substack. If you go to my Substack under my name, Michael Yon, you'll see photos from Argentina in the dope thing. And they got children there all over the place, up on dad's shoulders, and they got these people dressed up like, things that make children happy. And like on one of the dolls that one of the actors is dressed up as, it says like Satan Co or something on the back of the head, right? I mean, it's just like they're openly doping up your children, openly doing it. And the parents are taking them in there, and the kids are writing on the wall that's got all these mushrooms on the wall. Look on my Substack and look at these photos. It's intense.
No, I did.
And men are just
it.
rolling over. Men are just rolling over, going, "Okay, Chinese
Right.
are getting even."
I got it. Well, you paint a pretty drab picture.
We can beat
Let me
them,
just ask.
or I wouldn't be fighting.
No,
We can beat them.
I get it, but you have to have some leadership and organization. I mean, I just listen to you and I go, we're just, we're just, we're sitting ducks,
But
and
everybody can fight, sir. Kirk, everybody can fight. Everybody. First of all, like one lawyer in Bangkok yesterday, I've known him for a while, and he's all for pushing the the cannabis all around Thailand, right? He's got licenses for it, and to sell it and grow it and transport it and warehouse it and all that stuff. And finally, I said, "That's enough, man. I blocked him. I didn't say you're blocked. I just blocked him. I'm just like, I've had enough of this, right? You have to draw a line." He's like, "Well, friends can disagree." I'm like, "Let's be crystal clear. If you're pushing drugs on children, we ain't friends. Period. There's nothing you got that I want. Nothing. I don't need it. You're pushing drugs on children, right? You're destroying Thailand, you're destroying America, you're destroying Japan, all these different places, destroying it. And you think we're going to be friends? No, we're not friends. That's what everybody can do. Draw a red line, and I mean a real red line. Like, I won't help you anymore. I'll trip you up every chance I get, right? Every chance I get, I'm going to throw gunk in the street, right? Not going to help you. Not going to help, right? And everybody watching this is in a position to do or not do something that causes problems for people that are doping up our country. Everybody. You cannot hire the guy that came in smelling like dope, right? You cannot, I mean, if you come in smelling like dope, there's people that want to, go to the Darien Gap and all these sorts of things with me. I'm like, rule number one, if I even suspect you're smoking dope or something, that'll be the end of the trip. Like, that'll be the end. I took some people down to the border. They smelled like dope. I was like, I know you came in all the way from Florida and all that. Bye. I told you, none of this crap with me. So many Americans smoke this stuff. They just think it's normal. I'm like, I don't care. I don't want you around. You're going to be nothing but trouble, right? Nothing but trouble. I'll never help you. I'll never, do anything that helps you at all. You're destroying my country by doing it yourself, by buying it from Chinese and whoever else is selling it to us. You're putting money in their pocket to invade my country. Why are we on the border for? And you monkeys will smoke dope on the border? Hello. Why don't you just give ammunition to the Chinese while you're at it? You know what I mean? Why don't you just, help them come in and invade? Because that's what you're doing. Don't help, for starters, right? And again, that includes alcohol. Often the dope heads will go, "What about alcohol, man?" Again, I'll say that again, too. They're all part of the same weapon system. It's all part of the psychological. That's why you have dope heads like Joe Rogan. Supply to answer, I'm probably the only person in the world that's turned down going on Joe Rogan multiple times, right? Like, I was on with Alex Jones. Alex is like, "I've been friends with Joe for 26 years, whatever, and I can put in a good word for it." We were live, right? And I'm like, I'm not going on Dope or Joe Rogan show. I mean, so many people have said, "Don't you understand? He reaches millions of people. You can reach his audience with that." And it's like, trust me, I can do the math. I didn't spend years in combat because I don't have any kind of wariness skills, right? That I'm, you know what I mean? I didn't get through years of combat and rolling around the Darien Gap and Afghanistan and Iraq and up and with the Maoists and I didn't get through all that because I'm not, like a tiger, right? And I totally get it. If I go on Joe Rogan, more readers will. He's already got huge, and I'm not going to add much to it, but a few will go on, and a few may do the dope, right? You're not helping by going on his show. You're building him up. You're building him up. Even to argue with him about it would be building him up, right? The main thing is chop his tree down every day. Like right now, I got my little hatchet, and I'm chopping a couple pieces of wood out of his tree, right? And again, he got on there with Elon Musk smoking dope in front of millions of people, right? That is an operation. That's a clear operation, right? How obvious can it be what he's doing? And people will say, "But he has great guests." That's a supplied answer. I've heard that so many times. When you hear the same thing over and over and over, it's a supplied answer. Like, the supplied answer is, but I watch Joe Rogan because he has great guests. That's what people say, right? That's a supplied answer. Of course, if you're going to poison somebody, you invite them to a great big banquet and you put one drop of poison, right? That's it. That's it. So we got all these great guests, millions of people come on, great guests. Yeah, but what about him? What about him? Yeah, he's drawing you into the restaurant to poison you. You know what I mean? And it's not like everybody's going to fall for it, but some sufficient. Remember, even if you don't do the drugs, somebody in your family does, or somebody in your neighborhood does, and then they break into your house and kill your daughter, right? I mean, it's that sort of stuff. It's deadly serious, right? These people are having psychotic episodes all over the place, committing murders, killing each other, killing themselves, right? And drugs are a common substrate to this, right? And again, anybody pushing drugs in when I was what, fourth or fifth grade, remember the detective comes to school, you probably had this happen, and they got all the, this is what marijuana look, here's the needles and all this stuff. You know, somebody's at some point in your life, there's going to be a pusher that comes and says, you need to take these drugs. That guy is the enemy. He's not your friend. And they, you know, they make the pusher out to be what he is. He's here to rob you of all your money and your life, right? Now, I think most of us, certainly of our age, had that detective or had that lesson in our school at some point, right? I certainly did. And I heard it so many times. Beware of pushers. Pushers are bad. But then when Joe Rogan is a pusher and Elon Musk is a pusher, like people are like, sure, I'll get the brain chip. I can't wait to get the brain chip. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, again, those people are pushers. They're old school pushers, but they're doing it at the mega level. They're doing it at the giga level, actually. They're doing it at such a high end level that it becomes almost invisible to people, right? And it's so in your face that you can't see it. Does anybody truly believe a guy on ketamine who smokes dope, who couldn't figure out how to not get the death jab when he's got his own private jets, that I should get a brain chip from him, and that he's actually got the wisdom and the engineering and the business sense to help me get to Mars, or that I would take his spaceship to Mars? Does anybody really believe that? Right? That he's actually
I think a lot
doing
of
boring.
people probably do. I think a lot of people probably do.
That he's
I
that.
listen to you and I get it. I get your passion about the drugs and stuff, and I get it. I'm not so sure he's that dumb, but I mean, or whatever. But
He might be a smart drug addict, but he's an open drug addict, and I'm not even risking
I get.
defamation because he's open about it.
I mean, I think it's obvious that drugs are part of the invasion. I mean, I get that. I mean, that's part of a. It's almost as I don't know if it's what's worse, people coming over the border or drugs coming over the border or making it legal or whatever. So
Total destruction.
I get.
Total
Yeah, I
destruction.
get it. I get it. How
It's
about
all part of the
just last?
same plan. It's not like that is separate. It's not like the airstrikes is separate from the artillery, is separate from the landmines, is separate from the sniper, is separate from the drugs, is separate from the fiat currency, is separate from the Bitcoin trap, and all these different things. It's not, these things are not separate. They're all part of the same war, right? It's a very comprehensive war. The Chinese, unrestricted warfare. It's an interesting book. Everybody should read it. But what we call it is full spectrum war. But a lot of people that read unrestricted warfare, they're like, look at this idea that the Chinese came up with. I'm like, dude, we've been doing it for centuries. The Romans were doing it. Unrestricted warfare is nothing new. We call it full spectrum war, right? That's what we call it, right? And the unrestricted warfare that we did to the Indians, is now being done to the United States. That's old. That's an old. I mean, doing every weapon in the book, food supply, of course, eugenics, the dope heads. That's a actually interesting old book. I mean, the whole, it's all, there's many different components to this warfare, and climate, both the climate hoax and actual weather manipulation are both actually, the hoax is real. I mean, it's a hoax. It's really a hoax, kayfabe, right? But the climate manipulation actually is real, right? It's funny. When I was in India, I spent about a year in India, and I divide the world into two countries, India and everything else, right? I've been to 99 countries. Most of my life has been overseas, right? And so India was India. And then there was all the others, right? But in India, like, everything moves at high energy. You can see, it's like being in a particle accelerator. You can see two religions like smashed into each other at the speed of light almost, and another religion pops out in real time. Oh, there it goes. There's another religion. I just saw a religion form right in front of me, right? That's like, or another cult form, whatever, and but one of the things I saw in India was the fakery. So much fakery. Let's say a candy bar. The one thing that I remember was Snickers. They'd be like, "Oh, this is a fake Snickers," and then Indians would fight like, "Actually, I like the fake better than the real." And then others would be like, "Actually, the fake because if they like the fake one better than the real one because it's got a lower price or whatever, then people will start to fake the fake. It'll be like layers of fakery. It'll be like, well, I like the fake. No, actually, that, and they'll have names for them. Like, well, actually, the fake. How do you spot the difference? Well, it's this. It's like, you can't make up this stuff. Like people start, if they like the fake better than the real, they'll start faking the fake. And this is how deep some of these information wars go. Is what I'm getting to with this. Anyway, it's quite fascinating. But
Well,
at the end of the
it's more
day,
than it's
information war
obviously
is the highest form of warfare.
right, right. It's obviously more than open borders and people crossing them. It's
Information war. That's it. That's the highest level.
is there anything that you would do for our east and west coasts, or are they all the same thing?
In summary, it's actually quite simple. In summary, it's quite simple. Information war, psychological operations. You just
Right.
do the information campaigns, and it takes generations sometimes, right? I mean, it's not like you plant the seeds and it's suddenly a redwood tree. You know what I mean? The information games take time to plant and nurture and spread and give seeds themselves. But these information campaigns that we should have just open borders, and that and they experiment, they figure out which supplied answers work the best, and over a period of time, it's like an evolution. It's like these stories that are told about whatever dope or whatever, they become like river rocks. I was just with Misako in this part of Japan, and we were looking at a creek in the forest, and I'm like, so you see these stones that are very smooth from the way the water flows. Stories become like that. Stories become very smooth. All the jagged edges get worn off. Like, why some salesmen can sell stuff very well, because they know all the objections. They know how to tell the story. Like that smooth. They become smooth like a stone, right? They know how to let things flow, right? And these information games over time, they become smoother. They begin to sell themselves. They have an R naught that's greater than one, right? They have, so the story starts retelling itself, like the choking Doberman story. You ever heard of the choking Doberman story?
No.
It's a story that pops up in the news sometimes as if it's real, and it's completely fake. There's a lot of stories like this that for some reason it's one of those stories that's been told for years and years and years, and it'll pop up in news, right? It'll pop up, it'll be repeated somewhere according to sources, and it'll retell that story. It's a story that has legs. There's a lot of stories like that. And the ideal information war, when they really have a good information war story, like the Chinese are just getting even for the opium wars, right? It has its own legs, right? It just spread. It's a seed that pops out. It's a plant that you plant the seeds, and it reseeds instantly, like planting mustard seeds, except it's poison ivy, right? And kudzu. And what I'm saying is, these stories, that if they're really well done information campaigns, they spread themselves. It's like a fire. You have to push it out to a certain point. And one of the ways they often do this is they'll have a bunch of books that tell some story about the rape of Nanjing or whatever. They'll tell the story over and over and over. They'll have museums about them. I go to museums all over the world. Misako and I constantly go to museums and all over the world. And museum warfare is very real. You'll have the books and the movies, and it's in news articles, and it's on Wikipedia, of course. So before you know it, the whole ecosystem that you're in is telling the same story. So that's the truth, right? It's very simple. It's very simple to create an architecture of lies. It's not difficult at all, especially if you control the media, especially if you're even a bigger player and you can influence museums, like for instance, the Chinese do. I've researched this quite a lot. I was in Malaysia in a museum that was operated, or it was heavily influenced by Chinese, on the island of Penang. And I was with Al Johnson, who I was talking with this morning about these things, actually. And we were down in Penang. This is, I don't know, 10 years ago, probably. We were down in Penang, and I said, this was an anti-Japanese museum in Penang, Malaysia. And I said, oh, very nice museum you've got here. And he said, oh yeah, I got invited to Beijing. We're like, bingo, that's why we're here. Of course, he didn't know that. And I said, oh, you were invited to Beijing? He said, oh yeah. And we're at the front desk, and he pulls out underneath. He's got a book there. He pulls out and puts her. He's like made to order. And he's like, there I am. He's got this photo of all these museum curators from around the world, like from all over the place. They were from Ukraine and Houston. There was one from Houston. Her name was Nancy Ling, I remember. And we found out later she's like close to the bushes and stuff. She's a curator and she's involved with the museum in or at least involved with the museum in Houston. Anyway, but all these different museums, we checked out all the names, right? So I photographed the whole book, right? All the names of all the curators, and we checked them all out. It took a long time. But what I'm getting to is China invites all these museum curators to Beijing every year, gives them awards, and then they kind of shape their museums. Like Misako and I, when we go to museums in places like Guatemala or Honduras or Panama or just all over, here in Japan, and sometimes you'll actually see the footprints of the Chinese. Basically, you'll see like, hey, here's this curator actually in Beijing with the photo, and he's getting one of the things they tell Japanese museum curators is, hey, we learn a lot from the Japanese. Why don't you come over and teach us these things? Our economy was, Japanese helped us build our economy. They ingratiate themselves, and then they get to tell their story through the Japanese museums or through the Honduran museums or in Guatemala or in Panama or wherever. We go to museums all over the world, around the United States. So they do it with museums, they do it with statues. I've been to museums all over China, right? And we look at this a lot. So what I'm getting to is this information architectures are intense, right? And they're all around you. You're in the matrix. And you have to be, this is why almost all of my books are very old, right? The vast, I would say 95% or more than 100 years old, or, getting there, right? Because I'm trying to remove myself from current. I do read current affairs, obviously. I go to wars and things like that, or I used to do that a lot. But I mean, so I get in the middle of these things. I go to the Panama Canal and go to Armenia and all these different places, Turkey, whatever. And, and I go to see these things, but I do look at the oldest books that I can find to try to remove my. Now, again, you're stepping into somebody else's information war, right? You're just in a different century of it, but you can actually start seeing patterns. You can see clear patterns, and you can see things that you'll see, like the Chinese involved in opium again and again and again and again. But it's just coincidental. You see them popping up all over the place. There's the Chinese on opium again. Okay,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I got to wrap this up, and I was just trying to think. I came thinking of more physical entities, but we got the big thing that strikes you is the information war and the subtleness of this is just kind of a wave that I mean China comes up a lot, obviously. I know there's other players, but China comes up a lot, and it's just part of this massive, I don't know, lava flow.
It is.
and and the information war, even though I was trying to think of something more physical, then you need leadership. I mean, you need, when you did that first part where you just said, this is what I do in a room, I'd get business people, I'd get generals, I'd get whatever, and get
Mm-hmm.
and then, call to action, you know, that's kind of what I was thinking about. And I just think like, who's really doing that? And, and I don't see that.
Yeah.
And I get the drug thing. I get the drug thing, how powerful that is. I got it. I listened to, I mean, I know that you mentioned, Tucker's interview with Dr. Daniel Amen, and he
Mm-hmm.
was on Tucker, and that was a great one because he just it was great to see a traditional person really go after the marijuana and the drugs early in kids. I mean, that was big. That was a good interview.
I've
Um,
told Tucker about that too. I mean, I'm not like buddies with Tucker, but I've been on a show and that sort of thing. And I'm like, why don't you like stand up on, to Doper Joe? And he's like, he's friends with Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? He's not gonna. That's their ecosystem, right? So I mean, I'm very happy that Tucker stood up. In fact, I sent that to a private chat I'm on with him and a couple of other people. And but congratulations on having Dr. Amen on. That was very. Dr. Amen hit it, as he was doing a B-52 strike on the cannabis. I mean, that was hardcore. People need to watch that. I published it on my Substack, but it's on Dr. Amen's X as well. A link
yeah,
to it.
I mean, I've followed him for probably 30, 40 years, and he's been doing those spectroscopy scans, and first it was athletes and things like that, but he can see a brain, and I mean, and right away see what's happening to it and see if it improves or gets worse. I mean, so he was an interesting guy. You got to love your brain and do things for it every day. I mean, it was really good. I want my grandchildren to see it and that kind of
So
stuff.
let me say one thing about the brain. One thing that a little comment that I've noticed that's very effective using this is to basically shut up the dopers. They talk too much. Is about things that they don't know about. Like, it's just a weed, man. It never hurt anybody. Like one of them told me, I don't know, last 24 hours ago, nobody ever died from marijuana. I'm like, okay, that'll be a bunch of bullshit. It happened right in front of me. I was there, right? It was a guy named Ori Yelenic, an Israeli. We were in India. He was high. He was going to swim across with an inner tube, the Ganges River, at a place called Laxmanjula. I said, don't do it, Ori. You're high, right? Because he loves to smoke dope. I used to travel with Israelis a lot, and they would love to smoke the dope every night in the guest houses, right? They would get amazingly high. And he was high. He was still, I'm like, don't do it, Ori. Look at the river. Listen to it. You know what I mean? It's loud. There's like trees going by, and it's like, it's a cat 5 practically. He died. We never found his body. I looked for days for his body, right? He died right there. He was high and stupid. He might as well have been drunk or anything else, but people die from it all the time. And Dr. Amen talked about the psychotic breaks, right? Didn't he talk about that? I mean, yeah, I mean, that video with Dr. Amen and Tucker, that is gold. Everybody should watch that and share it around. And what I was gonna say is one thing that I just started saying to these dope addicts is that always are trying to lecture me on, no, you want to cut down on my freedom, man. It's about my freedom. You never fought for freedom. You're a dope head. You're gonna break into my house, you bunkie. Is you don't respect your brain, I'm not going to respect your thoughts. I don't respect your feelings, and I don't respect your thoughts, and I don't respect you because you don't respect your own brain, right? If you don't respect your own brain, I don't include you in any, like, if the place is on fire, I'm going to rescue everybody but you. I'm seriously, you rescue yourself. This is deadly serious. This is man stuff. This is war. This is actual war where huge amounts of people already have died and are dying every single day. You can't walk down the street in parts of Los Angeles or Portland or San Francisco or Atlanta, all these places I go. Washington, D.C., try to check into a hotel there. They all smell like dope. The rooms smell like dope. The elevators smell like dope. The lobbies smell like dope. And I saw Antifa. I was with Masako. We saw every Antifa monkey we've ever been with, which is a lot, in Atlanta and Portland and all over the place. Misako and I were there when some of these, they're always doped up. They love their cannabis and other things. Those Antifa monkeys stabbed 2 people right in front of us. Knives, right? I mean, so right in Washington, D.C. Like, what do you mean nothing bad comes from? And they're like, marijuana doesn't cause violence like alcohol does, as if, oh, do you know where the word assassin came from? It came from hashin. It came from that's where the word assassin came from, right? Hashin, right? That's where it came from. Don't give me that crap. You're not educated. You're stupid. You're smoking dope. You're a monkey. I don't believe that Joe Rogan, the what's his name, Elon Musk, Rocket Boy, is doing all those things when he's on his ketamine and he's smoking dope and he can't even figure out not to take the death jab. He doesn't respect his brain, and I'm supposed to respect his thoughts about science. He said the science is unequivocal about the death jab. So how many people took the death jab because Mr. Ultra Science Rocket Boy told them to take it and are now dead, right? And are dead, right? I mean, that's how serious this is. It's deadly serious. Nobody gets a pass. Nobody gets a pass. Nobody. If they push the death jab, I won't give a pass to my own family for pushing the death jab. Period, right? Trump doesn't get a pass. Nobody, right? At some point, you got to draw the line. And until Americans do that, stand up and testosterone up, then we're just going to die. Chinese will take over America, just like they take over parts of Asia right now. They're taking Tibet. For those who haven't been to Tibet, fly on over there. I did. Actually, I drove up from Nepal. I don't think they're going to let me back in after the bad things I say, mean things. But the point is everybody can do something. Stand up to the drugs. If you stand up to the drug, remember who's pushing drugs. In addition to Elon Musk and Doper Joe Rogan, Who else pushed the drugs? Trump. Trump is trying to, he was pushing Amendment 3 in Florida. And, that's Soros stuff. Trump is pushing the same Soros line, pushing the death jabs, pushing the crypto and all this other crap. People have to they have to be brutal in their assessments, right? Don't get all sentimental about stuff. We're in a state of war. We have to accurately see what's happening. Oh, we're going to die as a group, right? Because it doesn't do any good if only 1% of us are awake. And nobody that's on dope is going to be awake. They're always going to be drawing us down. They're going to be a drain on us. The dope heads are going to be a drain on us. And again, when people stand up to the dope heads and say, that's it, I'm not helping you anymore. I'm just not, if you don't have enough food to eat your foot. You know what I mean? Seriously. I'm not going to give you food to eat if you're doing drugs, because you're not going to eat. You're going to do drugs. You're going to do drugs. You're going to go get more alcohol or whatever. Right. And people have to stand up like that. Otherwise we're all going together into the mud together.
Well, that's a good ending. I mean, I get it. You said very clearly, and that was an interesting interview. I was going to get on. I, I was thinking about going other places, but I get where you think that the invasion really is. I mean, it's an information
Invading our
war,
heads.
and it's a drug war, and I get it. So I'm going to wrap it up. I got to go, but thank you so much for spending the time. And someday I'll zip on over to Japan or the Panama Canal. I got to see it. And my grandfather helped build the Panama Canal. He's an engineer. And my mom went to Balboa High School. I found a yearbook at Balboa High School and the junior college there. And my mom was in it. So part of my it's Hong Kong. I was born there. My dad was a Pan American pilot. Then we moved to the California Napa Valley, and then but anyway, that was my mother and my grandfather are from that area. So anyway,
Panama is fascinating, isn't it? You lived in fascinating places. Hong Kong and Panama are two extremely fascinating places. A
you
lot
know
of people
what
don't
I mean.
realize how, a lot of people, even in Panama that are Panamanian, don't realize how intensely fascinating Panama is from the historical and future perspectives, and Hong Kong too.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to visit Panama. I'm a little ignorant of that. And I left when I was 3, Hong Kong, but I just remember my dad. He flew for 33 years for Pan American, and there was nothing you couldn't buy in Hong Kong. He knew all kinds of people from the tailor to
I
the
remember
the
that.
Kaduri
I remember
the
that.
Kaduri family that ran the town and stuff like that. And so it was always this freedom place, even though it was part of the British, and then the Chinese took over. And then I started paying attention to how fast the Chinese really took over, and slammed down the national security law. And you kept seeing the Tiananmen Square um, memorials just kind of go slowly each year, just less and less, and then the freedom movement, and that's how I got to watch it. And I actually started watching it through Epic Times, but I didn't know it was Epic Times. It was China in Focus, and they would have
Mm.
it every night, and I didn't know that was Epic Times. And then COVID came,
Yeah,
so
Epoch does
someday
important work.
they do great work, and so someday, and I'm actually going to interview one of the areas of interest. I'm going to interview China. Has forced organ harvesting. They have one of the largest, well, probably they have the world's biggest tourism, transplant tourism. And the Falun Gong are practitioners, and a lot of the people that are in that, actually the guy that started Epic Times was a Falun Gong practitioner, and he fled communist China, and he started a newspaper, turned out to be Epic Times, but just to seed information back into uh, uh, um, to China, and that became Epic Times. And a lot of the
Mm.
people, like the Shenyang dancers,
Right.
those are all Falun Gong practitioners. And so
I haven't seen them
they get,
yet. I haven't seen
oh,
them yet.
it's
I've
China.
missed them several times. Yeah.
It's China before communism, and I
Right.
didn't even know these were all connected. So I go and I see this great show, and it turns out they're Falun Gong practitioners, and the Falun Gong practitioners is kind of a Buddhist tradition, and they started in the late 1989 or so. They grew to 100 million people practicing, and the Chinese Communist Party encouraged it until it got bigger than the Chinese Communist Party. Now they use them for live organ harvesting, literally.
Mm.
So they do the Falun Gong. They do now. They're doing Uyghurs and some of the Tibetans, but
Because the
it's
Uyghurs and the Uyghurs are Muslims. They don't do a bunch of alcohol and drugs, right? And Falun Gong live very cleanly and they eat very well.
very
They say
clean,
they have good
and
organs.
that's who if
All,
you're going to
all
get
the all, Every Falun Gong person I've ever known or met, they've been very with it. You know what I mean? Their minds are clear, right? They're clearly not druggies or alcoholics or anything like that.
no,
So I mean, you can see why they're going for their organs because they live clean.
right. Well, it's kind of the perfect attack. You're taking away something that's threatening because they're peaceful people who just practice their faith that way, and they're inspiring people to live
Yeah.
that way.
So
And
they
they've
have
got
good organs. So you're killing them and stealing their organs.
and you're putting down a political threat because of, and
Right.
so I'm going to actually interview uh, a congressman, Neil Dunn from Florida, and
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to get banned tourism to China, in transplant tourism. He's a ex-urologist and he was in the army. So I'm going to interview him on that. I've interviewed another lady from the Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, but that's
Mm-hmm.
a group that in 2016 or 17 put out a big. It's internationally known, but we just it's grotesque. I mean, when you think about it, they don't even give them anesthesia. They just take them off the street. You're done, and that's it. So anyway, I gotta run, but I really appreciate your time, and I'm gonna come down to the. I'll be one of those people that come down to the Darien, and I'll share the work and bring it back because that's all I want to do is try to share, and
I'll take you there.
hopefully
And if you end up
you
in
know
Japan, I'll bring you into our study. We'll lay out the maps on the tables. I got some nice big tables for maps. I got map tables here. And we'll talk about stuff, right? Yeah. You have to spend
yeah
a day
no.
here though. It'll like we'll go through it.
I'm going to
All
go.
right.
I want to thank the audience for this edition and thank you for this edition of the Staying Healthy Today show. Until next time, stay and be well.